I see everything. I sit in the glass tower. I am the ghost in the corporate machine. My title says Senior Director of Strategy. My reality is far more clinical. I map the human psyche. I dissect the darkness behind the suit. Most people are simple. They want money. They want status. They want to be loved. But then there was Arthur. Arthur was a masterpiece of deception. He didn't just walk into a room. He colonized it. He was a high-level Machiavellian, a master of the dark triad. He arrived like a savior. The board of directors saw a genius. The staff saw a charismatic leader. I saw a predator. I saw the false self. Arthur's mask was perfect. It was crafted from years of studying human vulnerability. He began his ascent with love bombing. He singled out the most talented employees. He made them feel like stars. He promised them the world. Then, the triangulation began. He would whisper to one manager about another's disloyalty. He created invisible wars. He sat back and watched the chaos. He became the only source of truth. I watched him from my corner office. I saw him create cognitive dissonance. One day he was a mentor. The next, he was a silent executioner. His victims couldn't trust their own senses. They felt crazy. They felt small. Arthur was building his empire on their broken spirits. He was turning the company into his personal supply. He needed their fear. He needed their adoration. But mostly, he needed their silence. He used flying monkeys, middle managers who did his dirty work. They spread his rumors. They silenced his critics. They thought they were in his inner circle. They didn't realize they were just tools. Disposable. Replaceable. Arthur's target was the CEO chair. He was one board meeting away from total control. The current CEO was old. He was tired. He saw Arthur as the son he never had. This was Arthur's hoovering at its finest, sucking the life out of the powerful to sustain his own ego. But Arthur made one mistake. He forgot about the shadow. Carl Jung spoke of it. The shadow is the part of us we hide, the parts we deny, the parts we fear. Arthur's shadow was a monster. It was built on a foundation of profound inadequacy. Underneath the expensive suits and the sharp vocabulary, he was a void. He wasn't a genius. He was a mimic. He didn't create value. He stole it. His greatest fear was not failure. His greatest fear was being ordinary. Being seen as incompetent. Being exposed as a fraud. I didn't go to the board with evidence. Paperwork can be forged. Emails can be deleted. Psychology, however, is permanent. I began my shadow work on Arthur. I didn't fight him. I fed him. I became his most vocal supporter. I used his own tactics against him. I bombed his ego. I told him he was more than a CEO. I told him he was a visionary. I told him the board was intimidated by his intellect. I saw the hunger in his eyes grow. A narcissist who feels invincible is a narcissist who becomes reckless. He began to believe his own lie. He stopped preparing for technical questions. He relied solely on his charm. He thought he had conquered the board. The annual shareholders meeting was the stage. The eclipse was coming. The room was filled with the elite. Billionaires. Strategists. Power players. Arthur stood at the podium. He looked like a god. His presentation was a work of fiction. He spoke of growth that didn't exist. He spoke of synergy that was actually wrought. He was soaring on the wings of his own delusion. The board was nodding. The CEO was smiling. It was time. I didn't stand up. I didn't shout. I simply leaned into my microphone. I asked a question about the liquidity ratios of a shell company. A company Arthur used to hide his failures. A question about pure, cold data. Arthur smiled. He tried to use a platitude. We focus on the human capital, not just the numbers, he said. I didn't blink. I asked the question again. More specific this time. I used a tone of mild disappointment. As if I expected more from a genius. I saw the first crack. His left eyelid flickered. That is the micro-expression of terror. I turned to the board. Arthur is right, I said softly. Data is for the mediocre. Arthur operates on a level we can barely comprehend. Don't we, Arthur? The sarcasm was invisible to the board. But to a narcissist, it was a searing iron. It was narcissistic injury. He felt the sting of being mocked. He saw the CFO look at his notes. He saw the CEO tilt his head. The supply was being cut off. The mirror was no longer reflecting greatness. It was reflecting doubt. I pushed harder. I questioned his fundamental competence. I compared him to a junior analyst who had caught a mistake in his deck. I didn't call him a liar. I called him uninformed. To Arthur, that was worse than being called a murderer. The room went cold. The cognitive dissonance in the room shifted. The false self was crumbling. He wasn't the savior anymore. He was a cornered animal. He tried to regain control. But his voice was an octave higher. He began to stutter. He looked at his flying monkeys. They looked away. They smelled the blood and the water. They were already abandoning him. Then came the narcissistic rage. It is a volcanic explosion. It happens when the ego cannot handle the reality of its own failure. Arthur slammed his hands on the podium. The sound echoed like a gunshot. You think you can judge me? He screamed. He pointed a shaking finger at me. I am this company. You are all nothing. Without my vision, you are insects. I have spent years cleaning up your messes. The mask didn't just slip. It shattered. He began to list his manipulations. He boasted about how he had broken the managers. He bragged about how he had played the board for fools. He thought he was showing his power. He thought he was showing his dominance. In reality, he was performing a public autopsy of his own soul. The shareholders were frozen. The CEO looked like he had seen a ghost. Arthur didn't stop. The rage was a runaway train. He revealed everything. The triangulation, the gaslighting, the hidden losses. He was screaming into a silent room. He finally ran out of breath. He stood there, panting. Sweat ruined his expensive suit. He looked small. He looked ordinary. I stood up slowly. I looked him in the eye. Thank you for the clarity, Arthur, I said. I turned to the security team. They moved in. Arthur didn't fight them. He had experienced narcissistic collapse. When the false self dies, there is nothing left inside. He was a hollow shell. He was let out of the building. No one spoke. The silence was the sound of a vacuum being filled. The board fired him before he reached the lobby. The legal teams moved in by sunset. The flying monkeys were purged within the week. I stayed in the shadows. I didn't take the CEO position. I don't want the spotlight. The spotlight is where the masks are worn. I prefer the dark. I prefer the truth. The company began to heal. The cognitive dissonance faded. People began to trust their memories again. They think I am a hero. They are wrong. I am just a student of the shadow. I didn't destroy Arthur. Arthur destroyed himself. I just provided the mirror. Every predator has a weakness. Every mask has a seam. The higher they climb, the thinner the air. And the thinner the air, the harder it is to breathe behind a mask. If you find yourself in a game of strings, don't pull the strings. Cut the source of the puppet's breath. Target the ego. Expose the incompetence. Watch the shadow take over. This is the puppet master's eclipse. The light goes out. The truth remains. And the truth is cold. The truth is sharp. The truth is me. Sleep well. But remember, I am watching. And your shadow is hungry. Don't let it starve. Or it might eat you whole. Just like Arthur. One breath at a time. One lie at a time. Until there is nothing left. Except the dark. And the silence. The game never ends. It just changes players. I'll see you in the next office. I'll be the one. You don't notice. Until it's too late. Goodbye, for now. Watch your back. And your mind. The shadows are long today. And I am the darkest of them all.